Bioshock Infinite was a game that leading up to its release was promising the entire world. From gorgeous trailers, gameplay that seemed revolutionary, deep immersion with lots of moral choices to make. This was marketed as truly one of the most groundbreaking games to date at the time. And post-release, the hype remained, with all critics drooling at the mouth over it, receiving unbelievable scores from practically everyone. But seemingly years onwards, the reputation of Bioshock Infinite has diminished. From broken promises, unrealized potential, people feel as if they were sold a dream. But for me, this was my first time ever playing it. I was unaware of the history with this game. I loved the previous two titles in the franchise and was extremely excited to play this one. And after beating Bioshock Infinite for the first time, they did a lot well that I really enjoyed. But this is also extremely different from the other two Bioshocks. They make a lot of changes and some of them are good, but some of them are a bit more questionable or just unnecessary in my mind. But for a game that is officially 12 years old tomorrow as of writing this video, it holds up brilliantly today. This title has some of the best aspects in the franchise, but it does not scrape by without a good amount of flaws along the way. Still, it is a fantastic time and experience. Before we really do get into things, if you guys do enjoy this video, it would mean a lot if you could like, comment, and subscribe as we are trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. With that being said, let's jump right into it. Now, for Bioshock Infinite, they moved in many different directions and played with some new ideas compared to the very similar Bioshock 1 and 2. One of those changes was that we get to explore a brand new setting. With the previous two titles, we got to explore Rapture, and that's one of the main reasons the franchise got so popular in my mind. The world of Rapture is one of my favorite settings and worlds in gaming, so to see them move away from it here deterred some fans and left a bad taste in their mouths. But in Bioshock Infinite, the new place we get to explore is the world of Columbia, a city in the skies, which is the complete opposite from an underwater city. At least for me, I had no issue whatsoever with them moving away from the setting of Rapture. Of course, when I think about Bioshock, that is what I'm going to think of, but the world of Columbia is unbelievable in its own right. The opening sequence of entering the city for the first time was amazing. It gave off the same energy from Bioshock 1 when we saw Rapture.
Hallelujah.
This set up the groundwork for just an unbelievable setting, and it continues throughout the opening sequence of this game when we start to explore it. The energy and vibe that Columbia has is very different from Rapture. To start with, the first two titles I wouldn't necessarily say are full-on horror games by any means, but they're more of this eerie feeling in terms of the gameplay, the environment, the lighting, the sounds. It definitely was a bit more creepy. But with Infinite, this has no horror elements whatsoever. There's weird vibes and stuff obviously with the world of Columbia, but it doesn't give off horror energy in my mind. Also with Rapture, it was more like this rundown city with barely any citizens remaining, and the ones that did remain were just trying to take you out.
Is it someone new?
Columbia in the beginning was this seemingly thriving location. Families and kids running around, carnivals and games being played, places to buy goods. This seemed like a bustling city, but even with the beautiful aspects that this place has, there were obvious issues with it. With signs of extreme nationalism, racial supremacy, weird religious vibes, there is a lot here and we got to see and notice in the first 30 minutes of this game. And I think they do a great job of bringing all that up in the forefront very early on. The Bioshock franchise always did well with showing the ideologies and practices of the society that we were in. And even with a brand new setting, they do a good job here. From start to finish, I adored this setting and loved exploring it, and going through each mission was fun. I really like the aesthetic that they went for here, and it's enjoyable to experience. It does not beat out Rapture in my mind, but the world of Columbia does beat out a lot of other settings in my opinion. Now, the gameplay of Bioshock Infinite is another aspect that was extremely overhauled from the previous two titles, and I think some parts were really well done and fit in well with the world, but other parts just seemed really meaningless or overall hurt the experience for me. The biggest thing that I noticed from the get-go was how much faster paced the gameplay in Bioshock Infinite was. This was one of the good changes in my opinion. Not because I thought the combat from the first two games were slow, but that style would not have fit the style of what they were going for here. The areas we fight in are bigger, we have the sky rails to traverse around, and we have more enemies to fight in general. Everything pushes for the combat to be faster, and once I got the hang of it, it was a lot of fun. It probably is my favorite combat from the entire franchise, because it was never something I loved from the other games. They weren't bad by any means, but they were just solid, and I think Bioshock Infinite made it a lot more enjoyable. And playing into the idea of the fast-paced combat, the enemies are also a lot weaker for the most part. Earlier on, this did annoy me a lot as there just weren't a bunch of enemies and I was breezing through the game. But once they start adding more enemies in each encounter, it did become a bit better. Still, overall though, I wish the combat was a bit more challenging. Enemies got taken out way too quickly and I barely died at all throughout the game. And I promise you, I am no master at first-person shooters by any means. Okay, I know I just said all that stuff, but as I'm editing this video, I feel like my opinion might have slightly changed. I feel like if they made the enemies more difficult, the fast-paced nature of the combat would have been diminished, which in result would have made the combat less enjoyable in my mind. So I guess it's not a bad thing that they're not that difficult to take out. But getting back into it, another feature and aspect that I think makes the combat more forgiving and easier is the shield system. In Bioshock Infinite, we get this shield, and basically its job is to take some hits and damage before it gets to our actual health. But this thing also auto-regenerates itself, so you just have this extra layer of health that you never have to worry about healing, and it just makes each encounter that little bit easier. And you are also not allowed to carry multiple heals at once. But I'm actually happy it's like that here, as if you could, I don't know if I would have died at all. So yeah, I still do wish the overall combat was more difficult, but still. The gunplay itself is so much fun, and the use of traversal with the sky rails makes for some amazing level designs and fight sequences that are easily the best in the series. Even with it being easier, it is still so much fun. Another feature I liked a lot were the replacements to the plasmids. There were a few that were honestly a lot of fun to use and combine together. My favorite combo was the bucking bronco and the undertow. Launching enemies into the air then blasting them away with water was so much fun to do. And in terms of the guns, I enjoyed them all a lot as well. I think there was solid variety and there were some unique ones that stood out from others. My only real complaint in terms of it is the fact that we could only carry around 2 at a time. I don't really see the point in removing this ability to carry all the different kinds of guns that we find, because you end up using a bunch of them anyway, so I don't see the reasoning in removing something very practical. My only thought is that they wanted to limit as much menu time as possible with switching weapons, and wanted to keep the combat fast paced. So they only allowed you to have 2 weapons, so you only needed to switch between them and not having to go into a weapon wheel. So with these changes with the weapons and health and ammo, we are able to get these elements in new ways. This is the first time in a Bioshock game that we have a companion. Well, technically the second if we're counting the end of Bioshock 2 with Eleanor, but here we have Elizabeth along our side helping us. She's able to open up tears in the world to give us cover, more skyhooks to use, health, ammo. There's a lot of things that she can open up with rifts. But outside of that, she's also able to simply toss us items, like med kits, ammo, money, so that adds another layer to the gameplay.
Catch! Thanks! Good idea.
It makes buying ammo or health basically unnecessary, as you get them a decent amount from her and simply on the ground. And last thing I'll touch on in terms of the combat is the gear. To be honest, I did not touch this feature once. After I put on the gear for the first time, I never revisited that menu again. It just seemed so pointless, and they removed gene tonics, which I thought were very cool, so to see it downgraded to something that kinda sucks in my mind was sad to see. It's not bad, but nothing would have changed if it wasn't in the game in the first place in my mind. I wish they did matter, as in Bioshock 1 and 2, the gene tonics actually made a noticeable difference in your gameplay. But the gear did not really do that in my opinion. And the fact that we were cut from a lot of gene tonic slots to just a few gear ones was also a step back in my opinion. Okay, there's actually one more part of the combat that I want to talk about. The enemy variety throughout the game was honestly very solid. There was a good range of different enemies, and they were genuinely unique and different from one another. Of course you got your basic soldiers and things of that sort, but then you have some snipers, which they low-key have great aim, so you gotta play differently around them. You also have the Zealot of the Lady. These people were really cool, where they are able to disperse into a flock of crows so you can't do damage to them until they go back into their normal form. We also got the motorized Patriot. They resembled George Washington and they had crank guns and did a lot of damage. And lastly, the replacement for the Big Daddies, we got the Handymen. These guys were a problem. Every single time I came against one, I was running around on the skylines and they just kept chasing me. It was crazy. I really enjoyed fighting them and they were actually difficult compared to the other enemies. But overall, the gameplay in my opinion is the best in the series. Of course, there are a few changes that they made that just seemed weird in my opinion and don't see the point of them doing it. When we don't look at those aspects though, I feel like we get the best gunplay, the best movement, best areas to fight in, and very good enemy variety. All these aspects just make for a really enjoyable time and never once was I not having a good time with it. I love the fast-paced feel of things and added a lot to the overall experience of the game. Now, for the last part of this video, we will be talking about the story. This is a fairly controversial part of the game. From some of the story beats and the ending, some people thought the game went in directions that just didn't fit with the series. The story takes place in 1912, so this is well before the events of the previous two Bioshocks. And here we play as a man named Booker DeWitt. This game starts off with us in this storm rowing to this lighthouse. Here we learn of our task. We are here to bring a girl named Elizabeth Comstock to New York unharmed. We have to do this to repay our debt. What this debt exactly is, we are unaware of at this point in time. Here we go through a fantastic opening of us going into Colombia and it is done so well. I know I've already talked about this earlier, but it really shows off the grand scale of the floating city. But not just the reveal of the place, but the initial time we spend in it. It sets the tone and vibe of the world. It's a relatively peaceful opening with some weird baptism at the start, we go through these carnival games, but all of that turns wayside when we begin to learn more about ourselves as we are titled as the False Shepherd. We have a mark on our hands with the initials AD on them and this is supposed to signify the False Shepherd. They are prophesied to come to Colombia and attempt to steal Elizabeth. And the game flips a switch real quick, going from this relatively peaceful vibe to a very gruesome death. Here is when the game really starts to kick off. We finally get introduced to the gameplay and have to fight our way out of the situation to continue the search for Elizabeth. I think they handled this opening very well. From the start of the game to where we are now, it flows well and builds up the plot, our goals, and the world. There is a very solid foundation to build upon from here on out. So, we continue our journey to find Elizabeth and we eventually get to where she is. But before we get there, we have a few moments with the main enemy up to this point, Father Zachary Hale Comstock. He goes on talking about our dad and a few other things, so clearly he seems to know some stuff. And we have to escape him through some really fun sequences. But once we eventually meet up with Elizabeth for the first time, we can tell that she is being imprisoned in the tower that she lives in. So it isn't the hardest of things to get her to come with us as she wants to run away from Columbia and Comstock. She is being trapped because of her ability to open up tears in the world to seemingly different places and timelines, basically alternate realities. This is going to play a major part throughout the game. Once we meet up with Elizabeth, we go through this awesome chase sequence running away from the songbird that was keeping her captive. And I just have to say that there are some fantastic cinematic moments in this game. Like some of the chase sequences or shots that we see are just beautiful and so well done. They really add a lot to the overall experience. From here on out though, we are just basically trying to escape Columbia. There's not too many major plot points going on for a little bit of time. There are some smaller things that go on though, like Booker and Elizabeth having some beef once she learns that he is capturing her and bringing her to New York instead of her dream, which is Paris. We also have the subplot with the Vox Populi and their leader Fitzroy and their war with Comstock, and the whole concept of Elizabeth opening up different timelines and us traveling through them to reach our goal. I'll be honest, the Vox Populi plot was just not the most interesting thing to me. I thought it was cool going through different timelines and seeing different sides of the war. In the timeline we ended up staying in, Booker was the leader and a martyr for the Vox Populi. This causes a conflict with Fitzroy as she sees us as some imposter as we're supposed to be dead. So we end up having to fight the Vox Populi. But still, in the end I feel like it doesn't do much for the overall plot of the game as it just feels like a backdrop for the bigger things going on. By no means is it bad, it's just that a very big portion of this game goes by with the plot itself not really advancing. We just spend a very long time trying to escape from Comstock and Columbia. So once we finish up dealing with Fitzroy and the Vox Populi, we try to escape once again, but this stupid bird just keeps getting in the way.
Help me find it! Elizabeth!
We also learn that Elizabeth is Comstock's adopted daughter and is meant to succeed him once he passes away. We have some more interactions with the Lutesses and have a battle against Elizabeth's dead mother, which I believe was a cause from using the tear so many times. After all that though, she gets kidnapped by the songbird and we have to go save her once again. Through all this, we have some crazy sequences. We get pushed forward in time and interact with a version of Elizabeth that is a lot older than what she is now. This was a version of her that became the leader of Columbia, and we see New York City burning to the ground. The older Elizabeth sends us back with a note on how to control the songbird. At this point, I didn't even know what was real or not. Like, this game was tripping me out so bad. But I was really intrigued to see how things were going to wrap up because I had no clue about anything. Nothing made sense anymore. Once we get back to our current timeline though, we save Elizabeth while she was being experimented on. The whole level was actually really fun, as you could stealth your way through it and avoid those weird creatures with the light that would detect you and send enemies your way. It mixed things up a bit, which was nice. After all of that though, we make our final push to confront Comstock, but as we are going there, we learn a new revelation about Elizabeth's powers. We learned that her abilities were being dampened by a siphon that is on Monument Island where she was being imprisoned, and the dropping of information continues once we finally reach Comstock. It's funny because for most of this game, there wasn't really any crazy exposition or things being explained. It was pretty simple besides Elizabeth's ability, which was a very cool plot point. There is a part of me that wishes that the ending of this game wasn't so exposition heavy because it does leave you extremely confused at the conclusion. But also I feel like that's how we were meant to feel and I think they executed it well. But getting back to things, when we confront Comstock, he mentions Elizabeth's missing pinky, which was something that was mentioned earlier on in the game but seemed pretty inconsequential. After he mentions this, Booker takes no time at all to take him out in front of Elizabeth. From there, we move into the last portions of this game where we go through some awesome fight sequences holding off waves upon waves of Vox Populi. And once we fight them all, we are able to control the songbird and send it after the Monument Island to destroy the siphon that was holding back Elizabeth's powers. Once all of that happens, she gets full control of them and opens up a tear and we get sent to Rapture.
What is this place? Elizabeth?
This sequence was absolutely unbelievable. I was not expecting to end up here at all. And this is where the game just truly breaks my mind and I am left absolutely speechless. Once we rise to the surface from Rapture, we see the lighthouse that we see in Bioshock 1. And once we enter that door, we see an infinite amount more. There are seemingly endless timelines and different events. All these different possibilities depending on choices made. Which is kind of funny as this game actually gives the player no influence over the ending or any choices throughout. It's weird because there are moments where they have you make a choice and I just wonder why, as there's only one set ending to this game. Your choices don't mean anything. But getting back to it, we also learn about the true motive behind paying off Booker's debt. This part was also low-key kind of funny for me because I was kind of shipping Booker and Elizabeth together throughout this game, and here I learned that Elizabeth was actually our child named Anna. So rest in peace to that ship. Elizabeth shows us Robert Latouche showing up to our house and us giving her to them. Anna is also a name that we hear Booker say a few times throughout our playthrough.
Anna.
No, it's me, Elizabeth.
And we also have their initials on our hand. And it doesn't stop there. We also learn that we are somehow Comstock, and Comstock was the one who we gave our kid to, and we see in a scene where we try to get Anna back, but Comstock takes her away and we see her pinky get cut off, confirming that she is our child. After all of that, we want to stop the cycle of Comstock and bring him to an end. We want to break it off where the debt in Columbia no longer exists in a world where Elizabeth isn't taken away. So, at the ending of this game, we are brought to a baptism. The same baptism where Booker is born again into Comstock. We must stop this birth. We turn around and see all these different versions of Elizabeth, and they all drown us to stop the birth of Comstock and once and for all end the cycle. And in the post-credit scene, we see Booker in his place with Anna in her crib, signifying that the cycle was truly broken and that Comstock no longer exists and no more debt has to be repaid. This story truly throws me in for a loop. I was left so confused when I beat it, and I truly had no idea what was going on at all. I understood the vague idea of it all and what happened, but getting the full picture and understanding the why and the causes of these things took a few videos to fully grasp. I think the story for Bioshock Infinite is a very good one. I think the whole multiverse different timeline thing was a bit much potentially, but in the end it made for a fantastic ending and one that left me speechless and thinking for a very long time. They handled it fairly well by placing a constant, with that being the baptism and that being the way to stop Comstock from existing. It was a twist that I was not expecting at all. This is no Bioshock 1 twist, but it still left my brain trembling from confusion. Overall, it was a great story. Bioshock Infinite is a game that promised a lot in its development. With the trailers, the gameplay, there were high expectations over it. And even if this game came nowhere close to the level that was initially claimed to be, I still love it. This game is just really that good in my mind. It nails almost every aspect in my opinion. Columbia is utterly gorgeous, the combat is fast paced and fluid and the best in the franchise, and the story truly is just such a crazy one that had me so confused when the credits rolled. Even 12 years on, this game holds up brilliantly today and is a must play in my mind. There is just too much good here to pass up. My final rating of Bioshock Infinite is an 8.5 out of 10. I loved every second that I had with this title, and I hope one day we get to see this franchise return in some way. If you guys made it to the end of this video, thank you guys so much for watching. Your support means the absolute world to me. If you guys did enjoy this video, it would mean a lot if you could like, comment, and subscribe, as we are trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video, and God bless.